Thank you, Karen. I'm glad we are all at the same conference, my friends. We are converted. We have all drank the Community Hub Kool-Aid. So let's get three things straight ASAP. Number one, hubs are a means and an end. As a means, they have been a place historically from caves to porticos, to piazzas, to porches, to pubs, to post offices, now schools, storefronts, and websites. As a means, we have called this work community development, city building, collective impact. Insert flavor of the month word here. Number two, research shows that hubs matter. First of all, community attachment matters. Communities with the highest rate of community attachment also have the highest rate of GDP year over year. Places where residents can bump into each other, make decisions, volunteer. It takes over 15 years of sustained work to build community attachment. And that includes opportunities for community development, local, informal, and formal associations, and opportunities for shared space. And strong community attachment is proven prevention. Lower crime rates, higher educational achievement, and health indicators. And number three, we need to spend way more time, starting at this conference and with this panel, on Marva's elephant on the table. Young Daniele, my first job at the Rexdale Community Health Center, my boss, Lorraine Duff, tells me to go to a community meeting in social housing. The room is packed with about 50 residents, agencies, and community leaders. There's no heat in the damn place. It's frigid. The 40 coffee pot percolator has been on for 2 days to make sure we've all got coffee brewing. All of us are standing around with our agendas, and Marva, the resident, stands up and she says, and I quote, "Let's agree on the principles right away. Let's celebrate who and how. Let's agree we all love each other. And then let's spend most of our time on the elephant on the table." Jeevaratnam tries to correct her and says, "No, Marva, it's the elephant in the room and the moose on the table." And she says, "It doesn't matter, the moose on the room, the elephant on the table. Can we spend most of our time on sustainability, resources, and relationships?" Today's panel is going to celebrate the how and the who and the why. And then we're going to open it up for the elephants on the table, the pain points, and how we can solve those. And let that be our guide for the rest of the discussions over the next 2 days. To get us in gingerly, Shirley Racine. Shirley's going to talk about, as a community volunteer, how she saw the need and pushed parties together to build a hub. Shirley?
Thank you very much, and good morning, bonjour, everyone. I'm delighted to be here as the president of the volunteer committee for the Limoges Health Hub. I'm from a small community 30 minutes east of Ottawa. Our population is 4,700. 75% of our residents speak French as their first language. We have no medical services. We don't have a grocery store, or not a lot of other services. We do have a fire hall and a caisse populaire. Our residents travel frequently to the city to overburdened emergency rooms for medical attention. Many have no access to, they can't find a family doctor. And a lot of our seniors just do without because they don't even have the capacity to find one. We all live life-changing situations in our lives. The following example that I'm going to share with you drove my desire to bring bilingual primary health care services to our community. My mother-in-law was unilingual French, and at the age of 90, she went to a small clinic in one of our small communities and could not be served by a doctor, could not see a French-speaking doctor. She was very ill that day, and she was devastated. So when she shared her story with me, and she was crying, it just broke my heart. And I said, my first language is English, by the way, and married into a French family. I said, this has to change. There has to be a way to change this. So I set out with a group of 7 very dedicated volunteers more than 5 years ago. We initially, what our plan was, or our vision was to open a small bilingual family clinic. Finding doctors is one thing. Finding bilingual doctors is another thing, trust me. With time, developers demonstrated interest in building a clinic. A host of health professionals and pharmacists came forth, but still, after 2.5 years, we weren't able to even get one doctor. So then we shifted our strategy to a build it and they will come approach, with not a penny in the bank account. We secured a developer who is now assuming the building our health hub, which is going to cost $5.5 million. We reached out to the Centre de Santé Communautaire de l'Estrie 2.5 years ago to seek their interest in coming to our community, as they would assure bilingual services. Their base is Francophone. And they were very interested. After a lot of hard work, we successfully secured the funding from the Government of Ontario last October, and the Centre de Santé is going to open this summer. We confirmed a pharmacist, and this pharmacist is investing significant funding in helping us secure additional doctors and is integrating all of our local professionals into one team. We are now fundraising in the community to raise funds to furnish and equip le Centre de Santé, which is part of our commitment, and I call it our community business offering, we offer to the Government of Ontario in turn for their support. What was a dream is becoming a reality because of the community hub concept inspiration. We evolved from a vision, and our vision was a medical center. It was a clinic of 3,500 square feet. It's evolved to 15,000 square feet, 3 floors, and yes, the first elevator in Limoges. This is big. You should have seen when we had the first lights, traffic lights. Along the way, we learned that early engagement of all stakeholders was critical, from our local MPP Grant Crack to a number of community groups. Everyone played a key role in the development of an integrated community health hub. Our biggest turning point was about 2 years ago when I met Premier Wynne in Finch, Ontario. No, it's smaller than Limoges, at the International Plowing Match. And she pointed me in Karen Petrie's direction. And I got to meet Brandon and Don, who became very good friends from the Community Hub Secretariat. From that moment on, I no longer felt so alone in the big maze. They inspired me and they supported me and led me to building a true bilingual health hub, which will offer a one-stop shop of a variety of a wealth of health and community services to our community. They even facilitated and helped us to meet the Minister of Health last June, which was another key point in our journey. I have to say that working on unknown territory, such as the health portfolio as a volunteer, was sometimes scary. Not knowing where to go, we as a team, though, did not give up. The 7 of us, we were committed. But the Community Hub team helped me navigate what I seen as a very, very complex system. Today, I'm proud to say that the Hub is going to be fully open as of September. This Hub will create at least 30 new jobs in our community. It has reinforced our community's pride, and it's pulled us together. It has set the course for future economic development. It will keep our seniors in their homes longer and permit them to be more independent, and will avoid our residents of all ages to have to travel to overcrowded emergency rooms. And most of all, it will offer them quality health services in the language of their choice. In support of this, recently I was speaking, we were fundraising, so we went to the seniors group in our community. And the president of this group is 80 years old. And she said to me, I will now be able to walk to see a doctor, a dentist, a foot care specialist, and go to the pharmacy. This is so wonderful, as I'm not sure how long I'm going to be able to continue to drive. This just felt so good. In closing, we recently reached out via Facebook, informing our residents that we were going to have doctors and if they wanted to be on the list. Within 10 minutes, we got 147 names put on our list and submitted to us. It reinforces the need that our community has. The list continues to grow, believe me. So small ideas have the power to grow, and people in communities pulling together turn the ideas to reality. And the idea of the Community Health Hub has done it for our community. The journey was long, and sometimes we felt like giving up. But as we've seen the pieces coming together, the feeling of making a difference really came forth. And in my case, knowing for the others, like my mother-in-law, just made it all worthwhile. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Shirley, for your stick-to-itiveness and your commitment to seeing a story through to what is now a vision and a grand opening. So thank you for that. Bill, maybe you could walk us through the journey many in this room are familiar with, many may have visited, from a house to now a 60,000 square foot hub.
Thank you. Well, good morning. It's my pleasure to tell you a little bit about our hub in the Cambridge community, about an hour west here of Toronto. And I'm feeling a little bit like we're on the hot seat, and I feel particularly bad because I'm facing this woman who is resourceful enough to go get a blanket from the car to put it on. I got to tell you, it's that kind of resourcefulness is going to create a community hub for you, right? So that's exactly what's going to happen. So anyway. So Langs began as a little neighborhood group 40 years ago, and what had happened is the founding members got together and they brought all these agencies together to say, can you come to this neighborhood and provide services to this community? And back in 1977, people didn't partner the way that we partner today, and they all went back to their respective organizations and said, that's not our mandate. So this little group, volunteer leaders like Shirley, who had the passion and the enthusiasm to drive this community development project, got a townhouse donated by a landlord, got a federal government grant, and started summer programs for kids, because that's what the community asked for the most. And we started in that very, very little townhouse with very humble beginnings to today, to this 58,000 square foot community hub that we're in. And I've been asked to tell you a little bit about the evolution of that hub and a little bit about the governance model of the hub. So the founding members, I gotta say, got it right. And it took close to 35 years to actually realize the vision they had back in 1977. Not only have we got a range of programs that Langs operates, such as early years programs, youth programs, women's groups, parenting programs, many of the same things that you operate in this room here. And we are a community health center. And I gotta say, community health centers in the province of Ontario have long been hubs since day one when they opened their doors. So what's not changed throughout our history, even though we're in this big, magnificent building, is our focus on prevention and health promotion. All of us in this room know that what makes Canadians, 50% of what makes Canadians sick is the social determinants of health, things like housing, employment, education, and income. And one of the most important determinants of health at our hub is creating a sense of community belonging. And I will come back to that a little bit later when I'm speaking. But to tell you more about the journey. So we created a 58,000 square foot community hub just about 5.5 years ago now. The hub is home to many of our programs at Lang's, some that I talked about. And in the hub, you can find services for prenatal programs right up to senior services. However, what's different when you walk in the door, what's very, very different about what you walk in the door, is we have 20 health and social service partners that are working under one roof in an integrated fashion. They're not in silos in a hub, they're integrated. Their offices are throughout the hub. And that's an important characteristic to remember if you're creating a community hub. Because anyone could rent space, anyone could build a building, but how you design that building and where you place people and the proximity of one service to another is a really, really important consideration. Those who use our services really appreciate the anonymity of coming in for multiple services to access sensitive services like addiction counseling or domestic violence, or they could take a program in the gymnasium, such as pickleball, which is huge for seniors right now, if you know anything about pickleball. They can hang out in the Green Lounge with free Wi-Fi. They can access a program in the courtyard. Often we see chair exercises and intergenerational things happening in the courtyard. And they could walk on the walking track. We said if we were going to take the social determinants of health seriously in our hub, we were going to build physical facilities that allowed for that, such as a gym and a walking track. In addition to those 20 partners that are under this roof, 27 other services come in and book space and operate programs anywhere from a weekly to a monthly basis. The hub is a sustainable model, and hubs can be sustainable. It feels overwhelming when you first get started, but they can be very sustainable. We do charge rent, and we generate about $150,000 in revenue a year for the hub. Now, I want to tell you that's really helpful. We're paying financing down because we had to finance to create the hub. But once that financing is paid, then we have money to invest back into programs and services and sustaining the building. But it's not about revenue generation. It's about bringing services together. It's about creating that sense of belonging that the community is looking for. And we recently completed an evaluation of the hub. We used an external evaluator along with the Family Center hub in Kitchener-Waterloo. And 82% of the clients who participated in the evaluation said they met new friends in this building and they felt greater connections to the community. Prior to that, they felt quite isolated and alone, and we had many, many stories throughout the evaluation that speaks to that impact.
It's so cold that Bill can't even turn the pages on his... But don't worry,
easy.
Shane,
Okay,
Shane is
thank you.
technological. Shane's got his iPad ready. He's ready.
So when you think about being connected to community, and you look at the literature, and you know that we spend in Canada $32.3 billion on depression and $51 billion on mental health services a year. And that includes sort of loss of wages, productivity, healthcare costs, and impact on quality of life. So just think about the impact community hubs can have in terms of creating connected communities. And that's the work that many of you already do. So I'm really speaking to the converted. We've been a pretty busy place. We've had more than 50 different cities and 100 different community groups come and see our hub. I think about half of you in this room have been there. We're happy to do more tours. And I'm pleased to tell you that we're expanding the hub by 8,000 square feet. 5.5 years later, we never imagined we would be building onto this facility. I thought I would be retired before that would happen. And we desperately need more parking. So we have 20 agencies on site. We now have 11 more that want to move in because the hub has been so tremendously successful. And you can do this in your communities too, and there's many examples of hubs that have done this throughout the province. Just speaking briefly about the governance model, Langs is the lead agency for the hub. We call the building the hub at 1145, which is the building address. And that makes partners feel like they're not part of us as a sponsoring organization. They're part of a collective in a community hub. And so our board leads that. They signed off on the financing. They got money from the federal government, the municipality. They fundraised. They put the hub together. But it's very much a partnership. I think one of the most important things that I'm going to leave you with that we did to create the community hub is we engaged the community. So back to those community development principles. So we brought 72 residents or clients together, and we had about 32 agencies that wanted to move into the hub when we first were building. And those residents interviewed all the agencies, and they made recommendations about what they thought should be the services located in the hub, because they're the ones that are going to access those services. And they actually did a phenomenal job of making the correct decisions, and that integration, I think, in part, is very much due to the success of the residents saying, this makes sense in our community, this makes sense under this roof. So that's a little bit about our hub, a little bit about the evolution, and I know we're going to come back and talk more about challenges, which I have a few of those to talk about, Danielle.
Thank you, Bill. Sarah. Sarah, you lead an organization focused on Indigenous women, looking at culture and learning. Talk to us a little bit about your journey.
For sure. First of all, I just like to acknowledge how honored I am to be able to bring a voice to the strength and resiliency of Indigenous women, not just in Toronto, but in Canada, and to finally be invited to these types of events and to be able to speak to that is huge. So I'm honored and thank you. The Native Women's Resource Center is like many Indigenous community centers. It literally started from the community for the community. And Indigenous women, due to systemic issues that are now becoming headline news with things such as the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, have a unique set of needs that isn't always met within the traditional Friendship Center model. So Indigenous women literally banded together and created a safe space in urban Toronto for them to come together. And I say them because we're 30 years old, and the center literally started in a basement on Gerrard, and over time we literally evolved and grew into the most beautiful, gigantic, problemsome Victorian house that we're blessed to call our home. So we really listened to the needs of our ancestors and our communities and really created a culturally based space where it was safe for us to connect and gather and practice cultures and the language, and over time it evolved. And we very much are a frontline service agency now that provides culturally based services and programming to empower and build the collective capacity of Indigenous women and their families in Toronto. And our programs range from education, employment, literacy, to a sexual violence response team, to human trafficking support services, to trauma counseling, to elders, to healers, because there really is that need in urban centers now to be able to create those safe spaces to access help from a non-judgmental, culturally based approach that can facilitate healing and empowerment and growth. And I see the good work. We do walk in and out of the door every single day. And I can't stress the importance of creating community hubs. And I mean, we wouldn't typically think of ourselves as a hub, but really that's exactly what we are. That's exactly what friendship centers are. It's that landing point. It's that place in the community that you can go when you have nowhere else, and you can be supported and empowered to start on a new path in a good way. So I think what has been really interesting to see, especially now in this age of community hubs, finally getting the attention they deserve, is partnerships and the distinct change in the work that we do and the way that we're able to better leverage our strengths as an Indigenous women's organization. Talk about from the water within traditional Indigenous, women are the water keepers, so it's timing, right? I'll own it. So it's really amazing to see community partners from Indigenous and non-Indigenous service providers help us to leverage our strength to increase the capacity of our service delivery. So, when we're talking about partnerships with Toronto City Police, with Women's College Hospital, with Anishinaabe Health, with non-traditional and traditional housing models, because it goes back to meeting the basic human needs of food, clothing, shelter, community, love, and being able to find strengths in the partnerships and other community models and to learn from each other and work together to better provide services in our communities, because we can't exist in silos and we need to be building collective capacity and working together to make strong, vibrant communities. So these conversations are really exciting, and I would really invite all of you, when you're looking at building community hubs and looking at culture, is that engagement piece with community and with the stakeholders in the neighborhoods, and inviting partners to the table that you might not have traditionally thought of as a fit for the organization. It's really pushing those boundaries and building strong communities. And I can attest to the success stories that come out of marginalized and vulnerable communities when empowerment is the focus, not vulnerability.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Thank you for bringing the rain, bringing the love. And now we're going to ask Shane to bring it home. Started as a youth.
Do my best.
You will. As a youth, a resident, and now a manager at East Scarborough Storefront.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shane. It's great to be here with you all. So, yes, I started at the East Scarborough Storefront. Initially, I applied for a position working with youth. And since then, I've been able to see, the work that Storefront does with engaging not only residents, but in agency partners, and also the politicians in the area. And since being a part of Storefront, I've seen and heard so much transformational life stories from residents who have shared since being connected to Storefront's hub. It gave them the confidence to apply for university. Since being connected with Storefront's hub, they've met and had a discussion with the Governor General of Canada. There's even a local youth who, through getting involved with Storefront's hub, now he is an aspiring musician, and he is actually doing shows and rapping, and he has a CD. So I've just heard so many inspirational stories of residents being involved in Storefront's hub. And initially, Storefront started from hearing the responses and needs of the community. There was a lot of new immigrants and newcomers along the Kingston Road in area, mid to late 1990s, and there's no programs or services for them to access. So a bunch of residents, local politicians, and other service agency providers came together and had several meetings to figure out how can we solve this issue of having all these residents living in motels along Kingston Road who are newcomers to Canada, and there's no services or programs for them to access. So through several meetings, money was pulled together, and they hired an consultant who is now our director in Ann Gloger. And then Storefront was initially launched in 2001 in an open space inside of a Morningside Mall, which is East Scarborough. And at the time, we had 20 to 30 service agency providers coming to Storefront on a daily basis and providing services and programs to the community. So for example, on Monday, it could be a lawyer. On Tuesday, it could be immigration counselors. On Wednesday, after-school programming. And essentially, Storefront now is started as a hub model focusing on service provision, but now we also have a resident leadership, what we call at Storefront a circle. So instead of departments, at Storefront we call them circles. So we have a resident leadership circle, we have a community resource circle, a community university partnership circle, and all the circles at Storefront, they work in cohesion together to better serve the community, and get the community involved in what we are trying to accomplish at the East Scarborough Storefront.
Thank you, Shane. Great synergy of themes around the power of local driving needs, the broad engagement that's required, the move from agency focus to resident and community-led, and then the concept of sustainability, whether it's fundraising or government involvement. We now wanted to ask and spend the next 20 minutes on the pain point. So if you look back with all of the glory that's been shared here, and for all of you with your own respective successful stories, what is the one pressure point that you look back on and wish we could collectively address? Maybe I'll start with you, Bill.
Well, I made a 3-page list, so I don't know where to begin. But
you could send that to Karen
goes
and
up
her
into her
team
throat.
after.
But anyway, I think we invented things as we went along, and I think one of the tremendous new resources that is available to hubs in the province, which I'm absolutely delighted to see, is the resource network. I think it's going to be a phenomenal tool, and we need this room to help populate it, because everybody in this room has some capacity to actually help figure this model out, and you have tools and you have wisdom, and I think if we had that 5.5 years ago, it would have been much, much easier. It would have been a place to start. It would have been a place to connect with other hubs across the province. I would say that's probably one of the higher priorities on my list, and I'm thankful that the Hub Secretariat and Karen's leadership has created that for us today.
Great, thank you. Shane, what, as you look back at your journey and then the journey also of the Storefront, what is one of the pressure points or challenges that you've seen and that might still exist today?
So, of course, there are many, but if I narrow down on a point or two, a pain point for us at times is, in terms of gathering or acquiring information from the community, that takes staff time and resources to truly, do an in-depth inventory of the challenges that the community are facing. So for us, like if we had an allocated funding for staff time and resources to have those discussions with community members and other people in the community to really find out how can we better serve you, and also what strength, assets do you bring to the community to help us achieve the end goal of making the community a thriving place for everyone.
It's a great point, Shane, I think, to my earlier comment on all of the research that indicates it takes well over 15 years to build sustained community attachment. And that is good old-fashioned community development, which leads to the question, who the heck funds good old-fashioned community development? And that, I think, is an issue that we all have to wrestle with. And thank you for articulating that. Thank you. Sarah.
I would say it also comes back to the issue of capacity building within vulnerable and marginalized communities. So you want to be strategic and set yourself up for success. How are you afforded that luxury when you're fighting for survival to keep the doors open and the lights on? And anyone who runs small charitable organizations understands that core funding is a myth, a beautiful myth that doesn't actually exist for many of us. So you're scrapping together, program-based funding that's on, 2 to 3 year contracts. So you're constantly just fighting for survival instead of thinking about how do we be strategic about setting ourselves up for sustainability and for maximum impact. And I think there is a very important role for governments, federally, provincially, and municipally, to step up to the table and understand that investing in capacity building within community hubs is essential to build strong communities.
Shirley, you spoke significantly about your journey from a story to the hub. You talked throughout about the power of fundraising and the various people and groups that you talked to or met with. Is that one of your pressure points, or are there others that you would speak to in your journey?
Well, our journey is just a bit different because it was all volunteers. So working as a volunteer is always incredibly different. When I worked in the federal government and I was Director General in a position, I had staff, I had resources, and I had a title, can you imagine? But as a volunteer, when you go into a door, they look at you and they say, she's not serious. How's she going to do this? You're not going to do this. So one of my pressure points, or one of my big hurdles, was taking me seriously, or taking our group seriously and as volunteers. Because in our community, twice they tried to have a centre de santé district and the groups gave up. So when I spoke to Mark, who's going to be in one of the groups tomorrow, I said, trust me. He says, you can't give up. You have to work with me. And I said, trust me, you don't know me? I will not give up. And I think you could, if I would look at Brandon and Don, they will say the same thing. But the other thing is I had no one to talk to. I had no map. I had no example. So if I would have had the wonderful network that's being set up now, and people that I could pick up the phone, and I did pick up the phone and talk to Bill, and I did visit Cambridge, it helped me. It inspired me to talk to others, not to give up. But being alone out there is pretty scary because you want some examples or some lessons learned. And when I say it was a major turning point when I met Karen, and I met Don, and I met Brandon, trust me, I called them, I emailed. And they came out to our community. And that really meant something. It meant that the government was serious, they were going to work with us, and they helped me navigate. Navigating is hard. So as a volunteer, it is daunting, it is scary, but the hub secretariat does fill that need, and being able to be here and to learn from others is going to be another plus, because I did say we're 15,000 square feet, but we could actually fill, like, not as much as my colleague here, but we have others on a waiting list wanting to come in with us. So we have to build something else. So we do have the power as volunteers to do it and build momentum. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we would all attest that in our individual work with people, loneliness is hell. In our work in neighborhoods and in community, loneliness is hell. And we've got this group together to mobilize. We also have, as the Premier said this morning, this spontaneous eruption of activity that is happening on the ground. Have you, in all of the engagement work you've all done, ever looked around at all of the people sitting at the table and thought, where the hell is blank? It could be a sector. It could be a constituent. We're so surrounded by a bunch of usual suspects. What unusual suspect do you think we need to pull together? Shane, we're coming this way.
So in terms of storefront and how we work, we've been thinking about unusual suspects for the past 10 years or so. So we've strengthened relationships with local education institutions, particularly in research areas in the community, as well as recently we are more connecting with faith groups as well in the community, and oftentimes faith groups, they may be siloed and not connected with the community and organization. As well as storefront, we have our model called the connected community approach. And in that model, you have the community backbone organization. You have people who live in the community who are residents, and local change makers, which are individuals or organizations who's intentionally making the community a better place. And you have policy and sector folks. So in terms of storefront's model, almost anyone who wants to be involved can be involved for the betterment of the community.
Thank you. Interesting comment around the faith communities as a possible as well. Sarah.
I think I'd have to state the obvious when I say that the voice of Indigenous stakeholders and leaders and groups in Canada have not been invited to the table for a very long time. And in this age of reconciliation and the TRC, that we're starting to get those invitations to the table to share in the good work that we've been doing within our own communities for many, many years. And I think just acknowledging the shared history that we have in Canada as Indigenous peoples and the strength that we can bring to those conversations in our traditional knowledge.
Thank you.
So I have 3 suggestions. I think that, just to talk about a couple of partners who are not at the table is, I would say municipal or regional level services that deliver things like income support and ODSP programs. They're hard to get to the table at first because they're largely bureaucracies. And they do very, very good work, and they have very, very good people that work for them. So I don't want to offend anyone in the room. But they're used to a model where clients come to them. They need to get out of their bureaucracies and get to community hubs. That's one of the partners that's missing. And I can tell you now, in this expression of interest for the 11 new agencies that want to come on site, our regional social services is one of those programs. The second piece of advice I would have is education. So we're one of the top 3 neighborhoods in Cambridge where people don't have a high school diploma. There's a rich opportunity to do something different about that from education in a community hub setting. So schools are really on board with hubs, and I think that's phenomenal. And what's driving that agenda, I think, is the use of schools to become hubs. But I want to say to the education sector, don't forget there are many hubs that are not in school, and education also needs to come to community. And lastly, I would probably say, don't wait for someone to come to the table if you're developing a hub. They will catch up. It will be a missed opportunity for them if they're not at the table, and they'll realize that after the fact. So get started. It doesn't matter if you have 2 partners, 5 partners, 10 partners. Just get it done, and the others will catch up.
Those are all drop the mic statements, right? Where you just leave the stage now, Bill. That's it. Walk off. That was brilliant. It's going to be a tough one, but I think you can follow it, Shirley. What do you say?
Yes, I can. Well, in our case, it was difficult bringing people to the table. I don't want to offend anyone either if there's reps in the room, but I have to say that we have our municipal, and then we have another level, like in other groups, that is called the United Counties, and they have a host of social services, and I have tried, and I have called, and I have tried, and I have begged, and we cannot get them to be part of our hub. And they hold, like you were saying, Bill, they hold those services that we need to have in our hub, expanded hub, I should say, but we can't get them to the table. Funny we could get the province there. Funny we could get the feds there and the community, but we couldn't get the one group that holds those mental health services, that early childhood services, all of those services that would be key in an expanding area. Now, I did tell you how small we are. We're 4,700, but we're slated to be 10,000 people within the next 7 to 8 years because Ottawa is expanding out and our houses are cheaper. And so this is foundational. We need these services, but these are the people that hold the pen on economic development, and these people, we can't get them their attention. That's our biggest hurdle.
Thank you. I think one last group that we would speak to collectively is that while business has played a wonderful role in funding and potentially investing in the hub, full engagement will require them to sit at our collective tables in a different way and have them partner with us beyond the naming opportunities or the investment. And how we do that will be part of our future. So thank you all to our panelists for celebrating the who and the what and the when of our work. May we have the courage to use this as an opportunity to take these elephants in the room, moose on the table, whatever the hell Marva called them, and bring them forward for the rest of the conference. It will be our collective success to be able to address those. And now, because it is very cold and because they are so deserving, how about a standing, jumping, clapping ovation for this panel?